Now that we have a good foundation for the causes of speech-language impairments, both primary and secondary, we're going to move into the actual assessment and intervention practices with language disorders in children. So this first chapter is infant and toddler policies and practices. Before we launch into the chapter, I want you to look at the developmental expectations that are outlined in tables A and B in the appendix, pages 502 to 511. These are very useful resources. In fact, I'm going to bookmark this and put it away so I can pull this information out later to share with parents, teachers, caregivers, administrators, other providers, because when we talk about our prevention presentations that we did and language expectations, I'm sure you found this very useful. It will also be useful to communicate this to your teachers about what the language expectations are for certain age students. So for instance, if I look down to 48 and 72 months, that is a late pre-operational thought. They can respond appropriately to false belief theory of mind tasks by around 48 months. If I have a student that's still struggling with this at 4 years old or 5 years old, that might be indicative of very severe language and cognitive deficits. But I have experienced this at the schools where you'll find a kindergartner that doesn't have these, the late pre-operational thought stage established. That's helpful to teachers to help them understand where the child is functioning and to be able to get down to the child's level, because so often they don't know how to move down below the level of expectation they're used to teaching, being the kindergarten level. So be sure to reference that. Okay, so the book also states leading into this chapter, when achievement of pre-linguistic and early symbolic functioning extend into the preschool and school age years, early language targets must be addressed in a manner that is age and contextually appropriate. So again, we've got to back it up to their level in order to build them up and bring them up. And it's really relevant at the preschool stage because the levels are so much are so varied in what they can do between the months of development. So Child Find Services, IDEA mandate states identify children with developmental risk as soon as possible in the infant and toddler years. And with that, they'll develop the Individualized Family Service Plan, or IFSP. The Part C is defined as to prevent the disability and provide early intervention with identified disabilities. You have a twofold of Part C. So there are 5 goals of Part C. 1, to enhance the development of infants and toddlers with disabilities, which is minimizing potential for developmental delay and support significant brain development that occurs during a child's first 3 years of life. I just highlighted on the PowerPoint. You can find the full explanations on page 216 and page 217. Number 2, you want to reduce educational costs to society, including schools, by minimizing the need for special education and related services after infants and toddlers with disabilities reach school age. 3, we want to maximize the potential for individuals with disabilities to live independently in society. So we know the earlier they get intervened, the more successful they'll be later in life and be able to function independently. 4, we want to enhance the capacity of families to meet the special needs of infants and toddlers with disabilities. These parents, most of them aren't going to be speech language pathologists or child learning specialists. They're not going to know how to meet the needs of these children with hearing impairment or Down syndrome or other significant deficits that require early intervening services. And then 5, to enhance the capacity of state and local agencies and service providers to identify, evaluate, and meet the needs of all children. So Part C of IDEA covers services from birth to 3 years. And remember, it's twofold. You can give the service in order to prevent the identification of a later disability for children who are at high risk, or you can provide the services to children with an already identified disability. Sorry. The baby isn't here, and she just pressed a recording, so I'm going to pause. Okay, I turned the bouncy off. Moving on. So delays in cognitive development would be an area in which they can treat. Let me find my spot. I'm sorry. So if they could have delay in just one area. Remember, developmental delay, you have to have delays in 2 areas, such as cognition and communication. But in Part C, early intervention, they only need a delay in one area to receive services. So you have cognitive development, physical development, including vision and hearing, communication development, social or emotional development, and adaptive skills. Additionally, the children may be eligible with a diagnosed physical or mental condition, including that one that has a high probability resulting in developmental delay, or one that includes conditions such as chromosomal abnormalities, genetic or congenital disorders, severe sensory impairments, inborn errors in metabolism disorders reflecting disturbance of the development of the nervous system, congenital infections, and disorders secondary to exposure to toxic substances, including fetal alcohol syndrome. So we've discussed all of those in the chapters leading up to this. Then you have the children who are at risk for a disability. That means that they're an individual under 3 years of age who would be at risk of experiencing a substantial developmental delay if services were not provided to the individual.